The world is saved. The living room's dark, save for light being cast from the big TV screen and the imminent sunrise that's teasing the one starry sky with whispers of morning.
Hey, George.
Hey, Lions, how's it going?
I was trying to think of a way to do a convincing, podcasting of the dead, but there's a lot of special effects on that guy's voice. There's like a room echo. It's like very hollow and far away. I was like,
Yeah.
I can't impersonate that without then doing post-production work, which I'm not willing to do.
No. I mean, like it'd be akin to research almost. Like it's not. That's not what we do here.
We might have to talk about that off air because I'm afraid of translating we're not allowed to do research into an all-purpose low effort.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to put effort into
No,
this.
that's not. I mean, come on. If this is anything like our professional lives, you're not allowed to put anything into anything.
I thought for sure you were going to say personal lives.
Oh no, I care even less about that.
Oh, gee.
You have to yes and in improv. You can't say.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. It's important. We played The Typing of the Dead,
Mhm.
which has a more complicated platform release history than I think most of the games we play. So this is an official modification of the arcade light gun game House of the Dead 2. So this was an arcade game that was then later released on PC and Dreamcast, and then I think again on the PS2, and then some revivals later. So this game came out in 1999 and 2000 and 2001.
Does it count as a light gun game if there's no gun?
Well, the House of the Dead,
Right,
was the
yes,
light gun game.
was the light gun game,
Yes,
yeah.
this is a keyboard gun game
Yeah. Okay.
based on the light gun game.
Based on the light gun game. Okay.
Yeah. So I think if I read the page correctly, technically we would be playing the 2001 version because we played the PC version of the North American release,
Gotcha.
right? So it's all the same game,
Yeah.
but just I was looking up the years of release and I was like, it's not normally this much work. I'm just literally going to read the description off the Wikipedia page because I was like, I can't come up with like a concise way to explain this. So, summary of the game. The Typing of the Dead is a modification of Sega's 1998 on-rails light gun arcade game, The House of the Dead 2, in which the gun is replaced by a keyboard, like a computer typing keyboard. Yep. The player takes the role of a secret agent in a zombie-infested Venice and must quickly type letters, words, and phrases in order to kill enemies.
Yep.
Which I tried to read that in like a normal person voice, but the words in those sentences are insane. Like those are crazy words.
Yeah, it's it's really weird and interesting, and I think it'll kind of tell as we go through this episode, because so often people are like, oh, well, is this a first person shooter? Is this an RPG? Well, it has elements of both. So if you said, is this like a typing tutor game? You would look at it way more favorably than is this a light gun game, right? Because if you're like, it's a light gun game, you'd be like, is it though? It's a typing game. You're like, yeah, it is. It's pretty awesome.
What a hell of a typing game it is.
Yeah, no, I mean, if my teacher said like, I need you to look, your typing skills aren't up to snuff. I need you to stay late and play Typing of the Dead. I mean, okay.
Okay, Mrs. Johansson. Yeah. Anyway. So my nostalgia experience for this is, I actually had a friend who had the Dreamcast version. My one friend with a Dreamcast had this game for the Dreamcast. So there was a very narrow window of time where I had actually played this as a kid. I've never played it in the arcade. I was talking to you earlier today, and I said, I realized playing this game, I was like, I want to see an arcade version of this, like in person.
Yeah.
Because I'm trying to imagine how you would build a hardened keyboard that would stand up to this much punishment. Like, you've played, you and I have played, I don't know, thousands of hours of Rock Band, at least hundreds.
Oh yeah, definitely hundreds for sure. Yeah.
Right. And those guitars are like, they're okay, but they're meant for home use.
Mhm.
If you go play Guitar Hero in an arcade, the thing weighs like 19 pounds because it's all metal guts. It's got like a reinforced frame. The buttons got big, heavy duty reinforced springs and everything. So like, presumably the keyboard for this game, because the arcade cabinet had a real keyboard attached to it, like it must be a super hardened keyboard. So like thinking about like, oh, I played this when I was a kid at my friend's house. It's more like, I wish I'd played this in arcade.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it'd just be, like clickety clackety, I do the attackety, right? As you just kind of hammer out those keys, right?
Listeners, he's chuckling because of the dramatic head shake I did during that joke.
Yeah, I don't actually have, I was the one who recommended this game. I've forgotten why, honestly. I think that I've started because, Google knows everything about me. It's kind of makes various recommendations of articles. And then occasionally be like, 10 games you haven't tried, or 10 NES titles that totally hold up, or, 10 ridiculous off the wall, whatever, right? And I think I saw this, and this is one of the ones where I have heard so many people talk about it, but it's always in this kind of offhand, oh, it's like blankety blank, or Typing of the Dead, when they're talking about weird over-the-top video games, and I was like, I want to close this gap in my nerd.
Right? It's like a joke you missed out on.
Yeah, where I'm like, I gotta know, like, what is this Typing of the Dead? Because I feel like I can get the gist of it, but it's kind of like when you're giving a report in school and you definitely only read the cliff notes. You know that you can probably pass it off. So if somebody said, oh, something Typing of the Dead, I'm like, oh yeah, isn't that the one with thing A and thing B? I'd be like, yeah, sure. But it's like, okay, now you gotta stop asking me questions because I have it's dry well.
Let's move on now. So I don't remember if I told you this or not, but you recall not too long ago, I don't know, it was 4 or 5 episodes ago, we had a guest on from the Retrospectives podcast.
Yes, we did.
Yeah, and you had actually also guested on their show.
Yes.
So I listened to their show, and they did an episode on Typing the Dead, and the whole time I was listening to it, I was like, man, I wish I had thought of this. Like, what a weird ass game. Like, that must have been really fun to try to critique, because it's obviously a joke,
right?
But it's not, because they took it so seriously when they were crafting it, right? And I was like, I would love to tear this game apart. And then, 2-3 months later, here we are, and you were like, I don't know, maybe Typing the Dead. I was like, yes, because now it's not me being a copycat. You came up with it on your own. So we had like an idea convergence.
Exactly. This is like evolution making crabs 7 different ways. It just thinks they're neat.
There's a cool name for that. It's like
convergent evolution.
But specifically for the crabs, it's like carnivalization or something weird.
Cancerostopy.
Yep,
that's gotta be it.
Which sounds like a painful procedure you have to get in your 50s. Gross.
Moving on.
Yeah. We should chill.
Yeah. Let's do it.
So if you're still along for this ride, you can continue to listen. You can make sure you subscribe so you always get new episodes. If you want to follow us along, you can find us on the Twitters. There's a show account, as well as we each have our own accounts. I stream most of the games we play on Twitch. I did actually manage to stream one session of this, but because it's an older game, it was like doing weird things with my screen resolution. But I did actually play this where people could see me. If you want to kind of go above and beyond, you can leave us a rating and review. That's always super helpful. But my favorite, though, is word of mouth. Tell somebody that you think they might like the show. That's always the best way, I think, to get more folks involved. And if you really want to go crazy, you can support us on Patreon. If you do, at any level, you get the after show. After most episodes, we record an after show. So there's an additional, sometimes hour of content that only goes out to patrons. And you can do that for as little as $1. But if you give us more dollars, you might get stickers or your name shouted out on the show. So with that, we need to make sure we thank first our 8-bit classics, Yarno.
An inebriated infantile.
Jason.
An egg boiled in a hot spring.
John.
Wondering, did the devil show up yet?
And Kevin.
A credulous lumberjack.
And our 16-bit heroes, Michael.
A bib-wearing old man.
And Jacob.
A rat is a rat is a rat is a rat is a rat.
And our full 3D supporter, David.
Asian inflicted French. All things that Typing of the Dead can make you type.
That last one is going to be a little bit of a clue about some later conversation about some of the things that make you type in the game.
Yeah, no, I when I was thinking, what should I do for the names of this? And I was like, oh, well, there's a bunch of different zombie types and all this sort of stuff. And I was like, nah, the easiest way, because there's so many things that they have you type in that's ridiculous. I'm like, this gives me a codified reason to list at least 7 of them,
Yeah, and the list is massive.
It's long. Oh my god! It's just and the problem is that there's there's no easy way, or I didn't know the easiest way to pause the game. So a lot of times I was like frantically picking up my phone to like hammer in, like a note so that way I could get back to killing zombies.
Yeah, no, I had to do, because as far as I could tell, there is no pause. So I had to do all my note taking like panicked in between levels because they also automatically push you into the next level. So anyway, we should talk about the audios and the visuals for this.
Yep.
I don't know, man. I think this game looks good.
Yeah.
Like, one of the things I noticed though that I have like a weird appreciation for is everything is super brightly lit. Like everything is very evenly lit. And I think partially that is an artifact of this time in history, like that art style.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's also very specifically this kind of game, right? A light gun arcade shooter, because you're on rails, right? So at no point should you ever say, oh, I didn't know there was a zombie in front of me, because that's not what this game is, right? And so even just watching 3 seconds of footage, or, if you're walking through the arcade and you can see the demo playing, everything looks like it is evenly lit from all directions, right?
Yep.
It's like living in the dome in Foundation. Like there's just magic light coming from everywhere.
I was gonna say it's if most horror movies are Star Trek movies, then this is Star Trek the TV show.
Yes. Yeah. It's lit like a soap opera.
Yeah,
Just
nice,
perfect.
even TV lighting.
Yeah, no shadows. and it, when I first noticed that, I was like, oh, that's I guess that's an artifact of the time. And then the more time I spent with it, I was like, no, this is an artistic choice. It's not that they couldn't friggin' render shadows at this time in history. And so once I kind of settled into the absurd, over the top arcade zombie polygons, I was like, no, this actually looks pretty good. This looks pretty solid.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that, it's very low poly, right? So it's low poly 3D, which, sometimes it holds up and sometimes it doesn't. But the nice thing is that there's not a tremendous number of people that you're interacting with. And they did spend some time crafting those. So it's kind of a step above James Bondian N64.
The golden eye like stamped on face.
Yeah, so it's a degree better than that. But the nice thing is most of what they're rendering are zombies, which are supposed to look not quite human, right? So again, it's kind of like the uncanny valley of Mario, right? Because Mario is easier to render in low poly 3D because he's not human. So if you get some stuff wrong or you don't have quite enough polygons, you can just kind of fudge it, right? Whereas the same thing with zombies. So I think that really kind of helps them out a lot. I think also too that it really helps, for me at least, is that you don't spend a whole lot of time really deeply assessing the visuals. You spend most of your time reading, honestly.
True.
And so to your point, not only does that does two functions. One is it makes sure that it is impossible to not know where the bad guys are because they are highlighted with words. There's no, mechanically there can't be a jump scare, right? In a sense, because even in a light gun game, you could have something sneak up on you and you just don't aim at it. But this thing has to give you the opportunity to type at it. So even the bats that fly at you, it's like C, K, F, D, so it does that. And then two is that, again, you're not sitting there being like, oh man, that zombie splatter didn't quite look quite right. Most of the time when you're assessing the visuals, you're assessing a hole-filled zombie as it falls to the ground, right?
Yes.
Which is going to lead you to a more a nicer review of it. So
the one place that you do see those seams that I can think of is on some of the boss fights, because when you are fighting, random zombies in the random levels, you either kill them pretty quickly or you have gotten up and walked away, right? Because they kind of have to wait a little, so they sort of have this like shambling, like rawr.
Like don't like hold. It is. It's Roger on the airplane where he's like, "Hold me back, hold me, no, dude, hold me back, hold me back, hold me back."
Yeah, exactly, right. It's you're not supposed to ever stand there and stare at them. You're fighting for your life,
right? You are typing for your life.
You are typing for your life. The bosses, and the only one that really, or the two that suffer from this problem are the final two bosses, which is, you can get into, because of their mechanic, you can get into a loop where you see them do the same action over and over and over. And then your brain starts to, what would you call it? resuspend disbelief or desuspend disbelief. Like you start to come back to, oh, I'm aware of what's happening. Like I no longer feel tense.
Reinstate disbelief.
Reinstate disbelief.
Yeah, because you get suspended and reinstated.
Yeah. So you unsuspend
disbelief. Yeah, you unsuspend disbelief, which is reinstating your suspension of non-belief.
Yes.
Yeah,
thank
got
you.
it. Yeah.
And so like that's it's not a huge deal. It's just throughout the game, I very consistently was like, man, this stuff all looks pretty good. This looks pretty good. And it's like, no, it looks good enough for the amount of attention you're giving it.
Right.
And that's not to say it's bad.
Yeah.
It's to say they got it to the place where it needed to be, and then they stopped polishing it, right? For cost reasons, time reasons, to make sure it was performant, because the game never slows down. Like it plays perfectly smooth. So I just thought it was funny that on a couple of the bosses, I was like, oh, now that I've seen them do this stupid like attack loop 8 times, because I'm not getting hit, but I'm also not damaging them.
Right.
I was like, now this loop looks kind of silly, but silly is sort of the name of the game. So even that doesn't ruin the experience. It's just an opportunity to even notice it.
Yes. And silly being the name of the game brings me to my next note, which, I mean, we just got to talk about it, which is blows my mind that your character model is actually you with a keyboard. I genuinely laughed out loud when I noticed that, right? Because the first thing you see is like, it's a first person game, right? So you're running in and there's like, somebody dying off to the side, and then there's zombies and it's like, type these words. I'm like, blah, 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 blam, and it's going great, right? And then at the end of that level, it shows you, I think, getting into a boat or something.
Yeah, you're talking to the other two AMS agents.
No, that's what it was. Because I remember it hit me like a brick. Is that you run up to the other 2 agents and all 3 of you are wearing the dorkiest like get up ever, and I was like, oh my God, this isn't like an affectation of the game where it's like, okay, you're going to be typing, but really you're shooting these things. It's like, no, you have as you pointed out, a Dreamcast strapped to your back, a keyboard in front of you that is ostensibly firing key bullets at these things, and not key like the Dragon Ball Z key, like key as in the QWERTY.
Also not keys like the Kingdom Hearts keyblade.
No, QWERTY keys. And so I literally just roared laughing, and my son from upstairs said, "What's so funny?" I'm like, I can't.
You're not old enough, buddy.
You're not old. And not in like the weird, like, oh, there was a sex thing. It's like, there's just a lot I'd have to unpack for you on this one.
And what a phenomenal, like, isolated example of the difference between, oh, I know that exists and I've played that game. Right. Because you could have seen, like, I knew, right? I've seen screenshots and stuff, and like, I knew that was already true, and I had played the game when I was a kid, but you never got close enough to the experience to have crossed the line into, oh, this is in you, like, this is diegetic in universe. They are actually wearing keyboards, because I presume while you were playing, like, you actually texted me and you were like, oh my God, they're actually, and I was like, oh yeah, I thought, yes, they are. I thought you knew that, but yes, they absolutely are.
Brain was melting, laughing so hard. I was just kind of like, oh my God, seriously? Like, what an odd choice to make. The only reason I can think about the reason why they made this choice is because it was a cabinet game. So they're like, oh, it's got to be all part of the experience, right? But I was just like, nah, man, just give me a gun and I'll make the mental leap from typing to shooting, but that was great. It's great.
So this actually leads me into a thing I wanted to talk to you about. The visuals are what I have summed up in my notes as hyper camp. Like, they're not really scary, right? Everything is like, and you describe to an alien what like zombies were like and what a zombie invasion was like and why that would be scary, but it doesn't nail any of the little details, like, you're on rails, so jump scares are impossible.
Right.
Everything's brightly lit, so you never feel like anything snuck up on you, right? Like, all these little things that a normal horror game would include, this game intentionally, I believe, omits for artistic reasons and because they're in on the joke. Which brings me to a very important question about the audiovisual. Is the voice acting part of the joke?
I don't know, right? Because it's bad, dude. And so, okay, so when I was first playing this game, I had the sound off just because I had to have the sound off. And I was like, that's fine, I'll play it with the sound on in a little bit. And I really almost, I mean, again, I needed the full experience. I'm fine with that. But my head voice acting is way better. Because, like, it's the, whatever, the big bad Goldman? Yeah. Goldman was like, like, you don't understand. This has to be done. This will be done. And I was like, yeah, nah, this guy's evil. And he's like, you don't understand. This has to be done. This will be done. And I was like, did Alexa type? Like, is this?
it's text to speech.
Is this proto text to speech? Because that's what it sounds like. It's just delivered so flat. Or in some cases, when they are yelling, it's the how did he do a spoken word version of a rap album? He found a way.
Yes,
it
feels just like that.
Yeah, it's I'm Slim Shady. Yes, I'm the real Shady. Like at one point, one of them was yelling, and I'm like, how did you do a monotone yell? Like you're yelling, but somehow you still sound bored.
Yeah. Characterizing it as text to speech. In 20 years, people will be like, but text to speech is great, right? But it's so specific that I'm reticent to use the word bad to describe it, because like James, the main guy, he does have some inflection in his voice, but it is very oddly placed.
Yes.
Right. And like Goldman, the bad guy, he is monotone to the point of it must have been like a strain on his
no
core.
No one speaks that way.
Yeah, to deliver an exactly consistent amount of air over his vocal cords. Like the zombies all, I don't know if humans make those noises or if it's all post-processing or if it's a mix, but like, they're very
zombie,
roar. Like those noises in isolation are actually like, oh, okay, this is kind of a scary noise. But every word that comes out of a character's mouth, plus all the levels have like NPCs, essentially, that you can optionally save, and their lines of dialogue are also delivered with emotion, but not in the places you would expect it. In the very first level, like one of the very first things you can do is there's a guy who's like by a well, and if you save, he's like screaming because he's down on his knees. Zombies are coming at him from either side, and he's like, and it's a fairly like full-throated, scream of terror. And then the second the zombies are down, he stands up and goes, you can get out that way. And just points to the gate that's like obviously right behind him. And it's just like, man, he recovered. Like, I wish I could, I can't process finding out that it's going to be hot today that quickly. Like, and that guy just got over this terrifying near-death experience instantly.
Unless it's like, there's an episode of The Simpsons where Lisa gets on TV and, goes way off the rails, and somebody goes like, I'll cut the feed, and he goes, shh, no, wait, I'm trying to get fired.
Yes.
So I'm wondering if this is like that, where he was like, wanted the zombies to get him, but in that moment he was panicking, but then when you saved him, he's like, oh, I guess you can get out over there. I don't know, man. I gotta go find some more zombies to kill me.
You just made my day a little bit longer.
It's you didn't save my life, you ruined my death from
The Incredibles. Yeah. So I guess, do you have any other things about? Oh, I did want to mention the music. To me, this music reminded me of Symphony of the Night, because it's like,
that's high praise.
Well, I mean, that is exceptionally high praise, and it's not that varied, right? Mm-hmm. Symphony of the Night has 50 different genres, and it's incredible. But I'm talking about like a lot of gothic, like traditional symphony instruments and chorus, but then also like raging guitars and modern style drums, right? And you're right, it is not that quality, but it's not bad,
right? And
it's in that kind of genre. It's just like, what if like gothic horror, because you're in Venice, right? So like, what if gothic horror, but also like wailing guitars, right? And it's just like, I don't know, Symphony of the Night has just ruined me for that, apparently.
Well, I think that it's thematically appropriate for the type of weirdness that they're going for, because I think of when I think of over the top like campy horror in video games is I think of Zombies Ate My Neighbors,
Yeah.
And
also brightly lit, and everything's kind of not scary.
No, it's super not, right? But they've got like the really weird kind of like
theremin, yeah,
like the theremin, and like so it's kind of creepy, but not really. But this is way more action filled, because of the mechanics behind it. No, I didn't really I had one throwaway note, which is it just looks really good when you're blowing stuff apart, like that.
Yeah, big polygonal chunks.
Yeah, just flying off. So you're like, yeah, take that, person whose name I just spelled or whatever. And I think this is a good transition into gameplay, which is we both got different endings to this game. Right?
True.
And the one I had this in visuals, which is for me, Goldman at the end said, "This is not over. There will be other successors." And a typical bad guy, like cut off one head, hail Hydra, kind of a thing. And then he pulls the Jesus right arms out and jumps backwards off of the building. And for me, he then fell all the way to the bottom. I'm like, okay, yeah, he falls to his death and then exploded. Full on car fireball explosion at the bottom. And I'd half checked out because I was actually thinking about like, man, do you think he's like satisfied during the fall, that he's like, oh, I really got them, or do you think he panicked at the end? Oh my God, So that's what happened in my ending.
Yeah. So there's at least 3 because I didn't know about that one, and I know about the one I got, and I know about one other.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the other endings that like in the speedrunning community is considered like it's the one you want, right? Is he says the same line and then he holds his arms out and then just rockets into the sky. And it's just, but it's like these are 2 interesting but opposite takes, right? Because for you, he fell onto the ground, I guess, and exploded, and it's like, well, I have follow-up questions.
Yeah.
Right?
Was he made of dynamite? What happened?
Yeah. Is this building made of dynamite that I'm standing on? Like, I'm now very concerned. When he rockets into the sky, it's like, oh, like maybe his threat was nothing. Like he is going to go make more zombies, and there's going to be a Typing of the Dead 2, right? And it's a long-running franchise. And the ending I got, which to me is the like wink to camera ending, like if you somehow got this far without knowing that this is a joke, this is a joke, is he jumps off the building with the same, says the same line, Jesus hands out, falls off the building, bungee cord pulls him back onto the building, and he lands right back where he was standing, and the one time in the game his expression changes, he smiles to the camera. And I was like, this game knows exactly what it is.
Yeah.
Like everyone working on the project had a singular vision of what they were going to deliver, and whether or not you like it is up to you. But I love when a creative project feels like it has that much cohesion from the creative team, where not only do you have multiple endings, right? Because the game is relatively short,
right?
But so not only do you have multiple endings, but they have an increasing level of like, you get that this is a joke, right? You get that this is a joke, right? Like somehow you didn't get all the way to the end of this and you are just now finding out that this is a joke, right? But just in case you did, this is a joke. And I have tremendous respect for that level of clarity and the fact that they executed on it, right? It's not like they snuck in like, oh, there's this one scary thing over here. There's this one part that like feels super tense or serious. It's like, no, it's a ridiculous faff from the moment you turn it on and the announcer does the Typing of the Dead. Yeah. From that, every option on the settings screen is all gun noises, right? Either loading a gun or firing a gun, right? All the way to the credits, which is zombies dancing, and you can shoot the credits, right? Just like you've been doing the whole game, and it's like, that's great. It's beautiful to have such clarity.
So one of the things that this game does is it allows you to alter the amount of life you have and the number of continues that you have. I think that, so a lot of games do this, but in this one in particular is, they offer you a bananas number of continues and what I would consider a comical amount of life. Now, that being said, I'm in my 30s and I've been typing for some time now. So, maybe the game's, going into it, I was like, I'm going to be real depressed if I can't clear this thing.
Well, what difficulty did you play on?
Normal.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I did very easy at first, and then I also did it on normal.
Yeah. I did it on whatever. I think I did on normal. I think I upped the number of continues that I had, but that was the only change that I made. Because I wanted the full experience. So yes, but to me, it's just kind of like, if you're like, no, I'm gonna. Because a lot of times the feel is, no, I'm gonna I'm going to show the game, I'm going to beat it, but I'm going to give myself tons of continues, and there's nothing the game can do about it, right? And this one I feel like they're like, oh no, stop, don't keep playing the game that's teaching you how to type. No, here's 9 continues and 5 lives and play over. So yeah,
they do start you, I think, with 3 and 3.
Yeah.
And then, so there's the arcade mode, which is how it was in the arcade. And then there's the original mode, which I think is what I did like 95% of my playing on. Probably you did as well.
I think so, yeah.
Because the original mode lets you tweak the difficulty and where you can turn your number of lives and continues up and down. But what I liked about it is you play original mode and you earn coins for like completing achievements. And if you earn enough coins, it's like, now you can have 5 lives instead of 3. Now you can have 5 continues instead of 3. Now you can have 9 continues instead of 5, right? So you are actually like, because they want you to keep playing, right? Even yes, it's built on the arcade loop, but like once they made it a ridiculous typing tutor game, it's like, we want you to keep playing. We don't want to just hand you ultra easy mode,
right?
So we will give you this like difficulty slider, which does change things a fair amount, and then we will drip out the lives and continues. You got to earn those because that's how you get through the game, right? So I was actually kind of impressed with the amount of thought that went into that, because in the arcade you have unlimited continues as long as you have unlimited money, right? Like they could have done the lazy thing like we've seen some arcade ports do, like Rampage, where they're just like, whatever, no quarters, you just play as long as you want to play. And that's fine, right? That's not a bad way to mod a game, but it's not great,
right?
Because you just lose all of the,
it's not the best way.
You lose all of the extrinsic, like I earned a thing, I earned a reward.
It's the medium place.
Yeah.
You know,
it's not the good place.
It's not the bad place. Right. It's the medium place.
Earth. So I don't know, it's pretty bad here. But I
what if this is the bad place?
It is. But I like that they give you some tools to modulate your experience, but then you can earn more tools to modulate your experience. Like that just felt like, hey, we didn't have to do this, even though it was probably not a huge amount of effort programming wise in porting the game. It's just like, thank you for taking the time. Gives me a silver spoon to reach for.
Well, and also too,
you're born with a silver spoon. Gives you a brass ring to reach for.
So, but I mean, also too, it kind of helps out because, you know, just like in Legend of Zelda, it's user defined difficulty in the sense that, you know, how do you make the game easier? By playing the game, right? So you make Link to the Past easier by getting all the heart containers and exploring the world. And so not only does the avatar get stronger, but the player gets stronger, right? So those two things I think work really well together. I also kind of liked, I mean, and they straight up tell you in the game, but again, I think this is kind of good teaching technique, which is that the levels are straight up difficulty, you know, where it's just kind of like, hey, are you beginning a typer? And start off at level 1. If you're an expert typer, and start off at level 5, like who cares, you know? So I thought that that the fact that as I was going through, as I was like, man, this is getting a little bit tougher. Oh, right, because it is actually getting tougher. The words and phrases are bananas, but, you know, longer and more difficult. You know, so I thought that scaling makes sense from an academic standpoint as well as a gameplay standpoint.
Yeah, well, and the fact that all of the typing stuff is diegetic. It's kind of funny that they use your ability to type. It's not like, oh, you know, case number 5, that's only for the most hardened, seasoned AMS agents, right? It's like, you gotta be a good typer to do this one, right? It's not even you have to be a good typer to defend yourself or destroy the zombies. It's just like you got type good over here,
yeah,
right? I just, again, like really leaning into the art object they've designed. On the subject of difficulty, totally unrelated to scale and like what number of continues and crap you have and what difficulty you set it on. I found the fact that the word is very tightly pinned to the movement of the enemy to be problematic, because if you are imagine any on rails shooter arcade game ever, right? A thing comes out at you. You have a giant reticle on the screen most of the time because it's reading the position of the gun. So you have a pretty clear idea of where you're shooting, right? You get some kind of super clear feedback. In this, because typing a key correctly at the correct time is what makes you hit or miss if you fail to do that. There is no feedback because it wouldn't make sense in this context. The zombies are always kind of moving.
Mhm.
Sometimes when they like burst through a door or whatever, they're actually moving quite quickly. And so as you progress through the game and the regular random walking around monsters have now, instead of a word or a couple words, they have a phrase, they have a long phrase, they have a long phrase with a bunch of punctuation. They have a long phrase that is like weird, or it's a line of poetry, but with like one of the words changed. So you're like fighting your brain thinking it knows what's coming next. Like the fact that it's also kind of bobbing on screen with their like idle sway, I actually found a little frustrating. But I think if you took that away and it was just like at the bottom of the screen, like most typing tutors just have like a place the words go, that would be worse. So I'm actually not sure, like maybe you could just dial the sway down a little bit so it doesn't match them like 1-to-1.
Yeah, no, I mean, I definitely think that just putting it at the bottom of the screen would kind of take some of the immersement out of it, you know? Immersion?
Immersement?
Yeah, right? I'm lucky that I kind of got that off while you were drinking, so I could correct myself before you jumped in on that.
Yeah, you can't say you corrected me, I corrected myself.
I knew it. I knew it was wrong. So the immersitude would be a little bit different. Also, though, one of the things that I thought was fascinating is that the game. So, like you said, with a light gun, it's point and shoot, right? With this, initially it's single word stuff, but they do get to the point where the phrases, sentences, punctuation, all that kind of stuff. Once you start targeting a zombie, you cannot untarget that zombie.
You have to press escape.
Okay. Well, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So the only reason I knew that is because in arcade mode, there's just the game. There's a mode that's called tutorial mode, but that's like for practicing, like practice short phrases, practice long phrases, practice with punctuation, practice things that have numbers, right? But then when you go into original mode, there's like a separate sort of tutorial thing, and it's very short, but it tells you those core controls.
Right.
And you can get I know because I did it. You also did it. Like you can get all the way through, even on normal difficulty, without knowing that. On the harder difficulties, I'm sure it's impossible.
Well, and I think that I would still even say that hitting escape would be suboptimal, because I'm sure that just resets your phrase. So at that point, then where I saw this happen the most often would be in this order: a zombie, like a thrown knife, and another zombie would appear on the screen. It would happen very, very quickly. So I'd see that first zombie and immediately start typing, and then the thrown knife would pop up, and I'd say, like, well, I can't attack that popped knife until I finish this phrase, and there's no way I'm going to finish this phrase before the knife hits me. I'm screwed, right? And so even in that case, even if I were able to I thought I'd be able to hit escape, press the button that will knock that thrown knife out of the air, then still get in the phrase that will stop the zombie from eating me. So, but I don't really know how else they would do that other than to ensure that whatever letter is the thing that was thrown at you does not appear at all in the phrase that's happening. And they already had to make sure that the letter of the item being thrown at you is not at the beginning of any of the phrases, because otherwise it wouldn't know what zombie you're targeting. I did think that once I made that realization, I did think it was fascinating then that I was like, so that means that there is a limit of 26 on how many different letters the phrase can start with on the screen at a time, right? Because every single time 3 zombies come at you, every one of those sentences starts with a different letter. And it's just one of those weird things where you're like, oh yeah, of course it does. That's kind of weird though, right? You know?
Yeah. And so I had also recognized this problem, but I came at it from a slightly different direction, because I did the tutorial thing, so I knew it was escape, and then I immediately forgot that it was escape. So I played for a while, and I was just like, God damn it, this is so annoying, and I can't remember which button it is. I thought it was Alt or Control for some reason, and so then I went and I'd already beaten the game, and I was like, I just have to know. So I went and played the tutorial again, and saw that it was escape, and then I tried executing on that, And I was like, oh, this is actually quite hard because your cognitive load of which zombie do I target first, especially on like normal and down, is whichever.
Right.
Like you're almost never in a situation where it's like one came in at the end of the hall and one came in at a door at the front of the hall. So he's right near you and you had better make sure you target that one first, even though the other one came on screen the first time. So you got to abandon that one. And they don't go to that well often, or maybe not at all in the lower difficulties. Maybe in the higher difficulties they do. With longer phrases, you might get that kind of like periscoping effect. But you don't press escape a lot when you're like typing, like
That's true.
typing in chat or typing a document. And so it's weird to incorporate that. The other place that I found this was really weird to incorporate is spaces are optional, punctuation is not. So you can type without pressing spaces, which is faster, except
way
that
faster.
you have the constant cognitive load of don't press spaces, don't press spaces, don't press spaces, right? So that if you're typing nonsense words,
Also, capitalization is optional.
Capitalization is optional.
And that threw me a lot because sometimes they capitalize stuff, sometimes they don't, and trying to capitalize it takes that little bit of extra time.
And this is, I think, an interesting problem to have because I agree with them to say spaces are optional, even if it's a sentence with punctuation, right? Spaces are optional. I just started typing them because I was like, then I don't have to think about it, right? The capitalization being optional, I had an easier time ignoring that. It's not cognitive load free, but I could not in the time we had to play. Maybe I'd get it eventually, but I could not internalize the escape thing. I was like, if I can't kill the zombie before that knife hits me, the knife is going to hit me.
Yep.
And what I think they might have done that would have made this a bit more of a reasonable balance. Projectiles are numbers only. Just don't put numbers in any of the zombies. Only projectiles get numbers.
That would have worked. Yep.
And maybe that would have made it too easy. Maybe they tried and they were like, yeah, people can't hit numbers all that well, right? Maybe
but they definitely put numbers in there.
There are numbers in there occasionally. Maybe the keyboard in the original game had a numpad and they felt like moving from the home row to the numpad was too awkward or too easy or something. Like I don't know. But there are numbers in the game, and I really wish they maybe even just an option like projectiles or numbers.
Well, especially on ones though, you wouldn't even need to do it because there are sometimes when projectiles are all that's happening, right? Like there's just one letter things flying at you. So you can still keep those as letters, you know? So it would just be ones where it's like, hey, we're mixing zombies and projectiles, which only happens a handful of times, you know? So I don't think it would suddenly, you'd be able to immediately pierce through the curtain and see what's going on. You know, I think that you'd have to be paying close attention. And at that point, you should probably write down all of your observations. And if you were doing that, you'd probably want to share your observations with somebody else, you know, maybe in a forum, an hour and a half long. You know?
Audio medium, I think.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, probably. I mean, with our faces.
But yeah, that was one of the few things where I was like, this is deviating, the escape thing specifically. Like, this is deviating enough from normal typing that this is like the only control the game has, right? Like in most video games, you could say like, oh, this is the button that makes you jump. This is the button that makes you attack. This is the button that makes you dash. This is how you go left and right. Like this game, because it is typing, if you already know how to type, feels like it has zero controls. You just, letters are on screen. You just press those letters. It's like once you're illiterate, if words move in front of your face, you kind of can't not read them, right? Like once you know how to type, even if you're a jank typist, like I am a jank typist, but like I have found my rhythm. And so I now like,
what do you do?
I only type with a couple of my fingers.
Walk me through that.
Okay. So imagine all of your fingers.
Yeah.
Now imagine only some of your fingers.
Yeah.
It's like that.
Oh,
yeah.
That's weird, man.
Yeah.
Like this is your job.
Did you take typing in high school?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
So my high school they were like, you can do typing, which was like the default, or you could do computer programming. And so I was like, I would rather do computer programming. And they just assumed anyone who was enough of a dork who would want to do that. They're like, oh, you must know how to type. And I was like, I don't. And they were like, but you're typing right now. And I was like, I am getting words into the computer. I'm not typing in the traditional sense.
So I was such a power nerd in middle school that I think I was forced to take typing at some point, but my friend and I got into competitions to see who could get more words per minute typing. So
yeah,
you know, and then all the ladies were lining up. But no, I mean, so that's the thing is I don't really remember whether or not I had typing, but it makes me think of my mom bought me hundreds of these things, and they tried so hard to get me to do it right, but like I don't hold a pen correctly. You know,
the little triangle thing.
Yeah. They got me a little like green triangle thing that you slip on the thing that like tries to make you hold it right. And I would just move it further up the pencil and go back to holding it incorrectly. So it's like that where somebody, it's one of those things where somebody finally says, you know, hey, do you do this? Or you know what it's like? It's like in Kung Fu when you do your arm circles and make the weird face, you know?
It's my nostrils flare because I am taking a deep breath.
But yeah, you know, where you have like a weird thing that kind of only you have a reason to know that you do it, you know? So anytime somebody says, you hold your pen weird, I'm like, shut up, man. It's fine.
I would say, generally speaking, for two people who are not professional podcasters, we do a pretty good job of remembering that the audience is at the table with us.
Yeah.
You referencing me flaring my nostrils in Kung Fu, that was just for us.
Yes.
that whole part of the podcast would just lift right out because everyone who now hears that part is like, I got nothing out of that exchange.
No, they didn't. But here, so let me paint you a picture. So
no, you're done. Shut up. I don't, God, where the hell what are we doing?
Okay. So one of the things that the bosses do that I think, oh God, we're doing a podcast. All right. So one of the things that this game could very easily fall prey to is sameness, right? Because with a light gun game, the entire thing is that you're lost in the fantasy and you're shooting bad guys, you know?
Well, and it's an on rails light gun game is, what is the one thing I need to do? Shoot, right? You don't have to know where to go. You don't have to execute getting there. Like, you'll get there.
Yeah. So, but even then, you know, like is most of the enjoyment comes from the aesthetic and from the, you know, like honestly, the hardware, man. I mean, a good light gun game. I remember, I think it was Time Crisis.
Time Crisis.
Where like the gun, when you pulled the trigger, the top part would actually like slam back and forward. I was like, I would just pump quarters into that game because that was satisfying, man. And then I think one time, like we went there and, you know, we put 4, like a quarter into each one.
Dual wield.
And we were like dual wielding. And we're like, this is the best use of $5 we've ever spent, you know?
No, the pinnacle of that I've ever done is I think it's the Terminator game.
With the shotgun?
There's a shotgun one and there's like I guess you'd call it like an assault rifle one. Mm-hmm. And dual wielding those is like, if you are an American or if you've consumed a lot of American media, that is about the closest that we have to like a pay to feel like Rambo fantasy.
Oh yeah. Because I don't know if I was there with you for all of your iterations, but we did do that one time where it was the assault rifles, but you had to pump to reload. So we had to like slam them forwards and like jerk back really quick to reload. Now I was like, this is, I mean, again, you know, I'm in my 30s and I felt like a 15-year-old, just so much joy, you know. Anyways, I say all that to say those games don't get samey for all of that stuff, for all of that like weird insanity, and also when it starts to get samey, you go play something else, right? So this game could very easily fall prey to that. I thought they did an amazing job with adding differences of kind in with the bosses, you know. So all of the bosses have some kind of like weird gimmick to them. The first one a little bit less so because you're still kind of getting into
the first one is hey, bosses are going to have gimmicks.
Right. Yeah. So, but I mean, it's just kind of like, oh, well, you know, you beat the big guy and then the little guy's coming after you. You're like, oh, okay, that's fine. And then for the second one, it's like, okay, you fight the boss, but there are times when you can be typing and times when you cannot, you know? And it's like, oh, that's kind of cool. Then the one that melted my brain was the Hydra.
With the questions.
Yes.
That, honestly, that gimmick is executed poorly. Because I think it's a good gimmick, but the way the questions scroll on screen and the amount of time you have to... Because remember, the words are moving while you're trying to read them. I like that gimmick. I did not love the way they executed.
I tell you, I mean, I honestly don't know how I feel about it because I didn't spend a whole lot of time in it. I liked the way it scrambled my brain, but that's very much so like a like I like horror because it makes me feel like scared in a safe space where it's just kind of I if it was scrambling my brain, it was probably executed poorly. But the idea of suddenly getting a question, then having to look at 3 moving answers, and before I can even start typing, determine the answer to the question, then start typing. I was like, at one point, and they're not all easy questions. At one point, one of them was, who was born the earliest? Abraham Lincoln, William Shakespeare, and like a third person. I was like, right, definitely William Shakespeare. But it takes you that hot second to be like, yeah, it wasn't, like the 42nd president, like Julius Caesar or Gal Gadot or whatever. It's not like 2 obvious people that you would know from pop culture and an ancient literary figure. It was all people from various famous people from various points in time. So I don't know. I thought it was, I enjoyed it.
One of the questions is something like, isn't good at flying? And the answer is penguin.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm with you that it's an interesting mechanic and it does find a way, because this is only the 3rd boss, right?
Mm-hmm.
It does find a way to just be like, hey, just correctly typing is not the only thing we're going to ask you to do, right? And here's a way we're going to, break your brain. The thing that I found frustrating about it, because I did enjoy it, but the thing that made it stand out in my mind as frustrating is if I'm fighting a zombie here and there's a zombie on the bridge and the zombie on the bridge throws a projectile at me and I'm like, no, I'm trapped in the phrase I was already typing. I know that I could have pressed escape, or I can try and rush through the phrase and then like, well, bam, hit that K or whatever. With the Hydras,
hit that K.
With the Hydras, a lot of the times I messed it up, it felt like I just literally didn't have enough time to read the crap on the screen. The questions scrolled in, and then the Hydra heads move like cartoon snake heads, because they are cartoon snake heads. So they bob and weave really fast, which means the word attached to that head is bobbing and weaving really fast. And there's 3 of them. So it's just like, that was the only time in the game that I caught myself being like, come on. Right? Which is, considering how absurd this game is, the fact that was the one gimmick where I was like, come on, is still pretty impressive. But that, I just wish there was a tiny bit more time, or that the question maybe like faded in so that you could start reading the whole thing right away. Because while it's scrolling, it is hard to read.
It's hard, if not impossible. So one of the things so I think they kind of acknowledged that they were like, this is weird. So one of the things you can do that I kind of stumbled upon, and you may or may not have, is that you can guess incorrectly and still not take damage. So if you shoot one, you just don't get attacked. Well, no, actually, if you shoot one, right? If you finish the shot, it gives you a split second where all of the other words drop away and the correct word is there. And then if you just type it really fast, you will still hit it.
Oh, damn. I did not notice that.
Yeah, I just noticed it like once or twice where I straight up guessed the wrong thing, but I was like, I'm in it now. And so I just kept, and it was one of them where it was like, does not like flying or doesn't fly well. And I was picking like bald eagle, like one that was just, it's like, this is known for its ability to fly, but I was like, whatever. I just hammered it through. And then all of the other words dipped away. And then the correct one was still there. And I was like, wait a minute. And I hammered it in because it was penguin, something really short, and it still dealt damage. I was like, oh, all right. So technically you could know the answer to none of the questions if you just kind of shoulder into it. They draw your attention to that in no way. It's still lightning fast, so it doesn't really fix the whole, there's not necessarily enough time. If you're not a great typer or young enough that you don't necessarily know the answers to the questions, all of this is defunct. But at least they were like, yeah, this may be asking a lot of people. Well, we'll add this backdoor thing in. And it's like, yeah, but the back door is like a 1 foot by 1 foot square that you have to dislocate your shoulders to get through.
This is a doggy door. It's like, yes, but it's in the back.
Yeah. So, like things can get in. Can people get in? I mean, if you dislocate most things, then yeah.
What was the 4th boss, the one with the chainsaw?
Yeah.
That one was my favorite because that was my like guffaw, my oh my god, this is so absurd. So the chainsaw boss, his gimmick is you have to type full sentences with a lot of punctuation, but it's a continuing story. So you have to your brain starts to attempt to just read and process the story, but you have to continually type so that he doesn't catch up to you, because you're like Panic backing up and
Yeah.
he's, running
Somehow
toward-
Panic backing up at the same rate that this thing is sprinting at you.
Yeah. So that's another part of being an AMS agent.
Yeah,
You have go gadget shoes.
Did yours tell a story about radium?
No.
Mine did.
Okay, so this is what made me get the guffaw out is at least the first time, because I don't remember what story was the second time. But it was the first sentence, which is in all caps. And remember, up until this point, they have not made it clear whether or not you need to care about letters being capitalized unless you've been paying close attention. In all caps, it says something like, "People are always mad at me because they think I'm yelling. I tried to tell them that it's just my caps lock key is broken, but they don't believe me. And I find that very upsetting." And his whole story is just like, he's a misunderstood
Nice.
giant monster with a chainsaw who's chasing you. I was just like, I'm laughing so hard. I'm reading it. I'm trying not to read it so that I can just type it. And I was like, this is good because this is such a clever way to say, oh, how do we make typing harder? And it's like, make them focus on the story.
Right.
Because then you're not focusing on typing, you're focusing on reading. And I was like, oh, that's a very subtle way to make typing harder after 4 levels at that point of typing. It's like, oh, but what if we get at their brain, like coming after your mental man?
So 2 things on that. One is on the caps lock thing. I saw a thing online where person A, apparently her name was Jennifer, is talking to person B, and she goes, "Why do you always post everything in all caps? It's very rude." And the person says, "It's because my caps lock key is broken. It would be rude if I called you a bitch, Jennifer." And I was like, that was some sass, man. Like,
now it's rude.
yeah, see, that's what rude looks like. The one that so what melted my brain on that one, there was one is that I just happened to have worked in like radiochemistry labs. So the fact that they started talking about radium not being great to eat, or uranium not being great to eat, I'm like, well, you're not wrong.
I'm glad you were able to measure the scientific accuracy of this zombie typing game.
Yeah. But was so the guy's like running at me and chainsaw, blah, and I'm like, okay. So I like hammer in the first thing and nothing happens. He's still like coming after me, right? So to me, like time dilates because it's not very long, right? But time is slowed down for me where I'm like, why? What? Why? What's going on? What's going on? It was a period at the very end that I didn't. But I'm sitting there like panic. I'm like, no, I did it. I got it. And then all of a sudden, like I imagined that the agent was like shakily like trying to like jam bullets into the chamber and like I can't. And then they finally got it that one. They're like, yes. And then they hit the period key and blam, it did it. But yeah, that period threw me. I wasn't expecting it to be a full sentence with a 12-point font period.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is actually something I noticed in the settings is this game doesn't have like what you would by modern standards call accessibility settings.
No.
The one thing they have is it says word size. There's normal and large. And the large word size is kind of big. Like unless your vision is very bad or you're for some reason playing this on like a super high resolution and so everything is like really tiny, right? Like the main thing that making words large does is it makes the punctuation easier to see. Because every time that I saw commas, periods, exclamation points, question marks,
Interabangs,
I don't think I saw any interrobangs.
ampersands.
No ampersands that I can remember.
Hashtags.
What I'm trying to remember is did I see any semicolons or colons? Because
No
those are on.
dashes.
Yeah, it had dashes, right? But like semicolon and colon are not super common in modern English, like prose, right? Like you use them, but you usually use them in like a list or whatever. But those are fairly fine, right? And the font choice they went with is okay, right? It's a little bit of a stylistic font, and then the subtitles when characters are talking is super stylized. It's almost like a comic booky kind of font. So if you made this game today, which weirdly, before we decided to play this, there is a version of this game that just came out like a year or two ago.
No way.
Yeah, Typing of the Dead Overkill. It's like on Steam right now. But I bet that game probably has some of these things like you can reduce the sway, you can change the colors, you can change the font and stuff because that stuff is not technically complicated to implement, and it would quadruple the size of the audience of people who would have a positive experience.
Right.
Because a lot of people use accessibility settings that don't need them.
Right.
I was able to deal with this way. I would have liked it if there was less.
Right. Well, it's like monsters that use inverted controls, you know, like you don't need the inverted controls, but apparently you have to ruin the game for some reason.
Yeah, I've never understood how someone would not invert their controls, and they are monsters, like you said just now.
No notes. Well done. that was some Tai Chi level wordplay.
We've been talking pretty effusively about this game with like some little niggling complaints here and there. I don't want to spend a ton of time on this, but just for my own, so I can sleep well tonight, I want to recognize out loud that apparently this game was not just made for like 15-year-old boys. It was made by 15-year-old boys, because there's maybe hundreds and hundreds of phrases and words. If you look through a list, and I had to look through a list, allow me to paint a word picture. I was playing this game, and we were able to get this for free off of My Abandonware. So if you want to go play this game, you can go and download it for free right now. No ROMs, no hacking, no nonsense required. You can play the original Typing of the Dead for free. I assume it's legal. If not, I'm sorry. But we were playing, and I kept seeing phrases that I was like, oh, that was a little boys clubby. That was a little sexist. And then I saw a few that were so over the top sexist that I was like, I need to make sure we're not playing like a hacked version of the game that's all like scripts from 80s porn.
Right.
And so I looked and like found a list of like, here is every phrase in the game. And I was like, no, this is intentional. There and the thing is, there are so many phrases, and a lot of the more absurd ones are the longer phrases. So if you don't get to the later levels, or you're not playing on a harder difficulty, you could reasonably play this game quite a bit and never see them. But they're like the shitty kind of subtle, like 80s and 90s, like assumptions about women, and like assumptions that the speaker is a man and that women have certain roles in society. And I was like, this is just frustrating.
Yeah.
That with all of the things, you could have just picked public domain poetry. You could have picked hell, you could have licensed something, right? You could just write gibberish, but you just have all these weird phrases about like, my wife left me and I'm sad. Now I have no one to cook for me. And you'll see like 3 zombies back to back, and it's like, zombie 1, my wife left me. Zombie 2, and now I'm sad. Zombie 3, I have no one to cook for me. And it's like, why did you do that? So again, we don't spend a ton of time on this, but like, if you do choose to play this game, and if you haven't guessed whether or not I'm going to recommend it, if you do choose to play this game, like, just know that some of that weirdness is in there. And if you're uncomfortable with it, maybe play the newer one that lets you customize.
I would guess, I'm not sure, but I would guess that the newest one that came out last year, if they don't automatically strip that stuff out, hopefully they kind of say, you know, like, hey, what's the age range that you're playing at? And honestly, I didn't notice that, just because the way I was chunking things in my mind is that, like, literally I stored what they were making me type in RAM and dumped it out the minute that zombie died, you know? So,
and you can do, like, I did multiple full scale playthroughs and several just like, I'm going to play this level for fun. And I would go whole sessions without seeing any of that stuff.
Right.
So it's like the list is just so big.
Right. Yeah. No, there is a ton of stuff, but what do you think, man?
It definitely held up, minus that one, sad detail. The graphics are surprisingly pleasant, even like in still frames. Music is fun. The voice acting is terrible, but I'm pretty sure on purpose. Like, I would be actually worried to go and play the newer one, because I'm afraid, based on screenshots I've seen, that the newer one forgot that this is a joke.
Oh.
Like, the lighting is all horror movie scary in the newer one, and the graphics are like way more like bloody realistic, like a more modern game. And it's like, no, this is supposed to be a faff. This held up because it's a faff. This was fun in its day because it was a faff. Like, maybe not everything needs a goddamn gritty reboot. Like, House of the Dead is the gritty reboot of Typing of the Dead. Like, it went from serious to joke, right? So to looking at the new one, I'm like, maybe the original, like they couldn't rebottle that lightning. So assuming you're okay with maybe seeing some kind of like goofy, inoffensive, dated, sexist phrases and things, like it's fun, it's free, it's super approachable. Like it's
pretty weird.
It's exceptionally weird and stupid, but like I had a really good time playing it. Like it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. No, I mean it's not often that we're playing even games that we play. No nostalgia goggles required.
I don't think I said that. No nostalgia goggles required.
Yeah. It's not often that when we're playing a game, even a comedy game, where I am genuinely laughing. Now, the difference is I'm laughing at the game, not with the game, but the game's doing stuff to make me laugh at it, you know? So it's like a good comedian who's kind of doing like physical, like the Three Stooges or something like that, where it's just like, I'm, laughing at the fact that you got a pie in the face, even though it's like, yeah, I'm letting them put a pie in my face. So no, I thought that, kind of everything that we said is the game is super approachable. It's kind of a nice extra little bit that it's kind of educational in the sense that, it does work on your typing skills. So, if my son was like, oh, hey, I want to play, a video game, and I'm like, I gotta do something to, make this not just a faff. It's like, play Typing of the Dead. Like now you're learning how to type. That's why I let him play video games for 2 hours. So yeah, no, I mean, I think it held up. No nostalgia goggles required. And the one thing I just got to make sure that people know is that cows are watching how you drive.
The curtain falls, the music plays, the credits roll, then it all fades to black. And you're left by yourself. The fanfare is gone. There's no player two there by your side to share victories won. But as you slowly progress down the hall to your bed, a few great events leak back into your head from the time that you spent traversing the land, battling evil, fighting the darkness, just sword in hand. Your memories creep in with the edge of a smile. You realize again what you lost for a while. You're gonna think back much less on how you saved the day than on all the experience gained. At the end of it all, gamers play what we play, not for game over, but rather for what we take away. The world is sad, but who cares? We both know that that's not what you came for. Your next adventure already in sight. You're all set to go. You're excited to see what's all wrong till it's right, and the world is saved. So you're more along for the ride. You're more along for the ride. You're more along for the ride. You're more along for the
I assume that's one of the phrases.
It is.
The one that I made a point to write down just because it gave me that kind of like chortle is one of the zombies popped out and he had a name and it was capitalized properly, so you could tell it was like a name, a proper noun. It was Michael Maxon.
I get it.
Michael Jackson. But because those letters are reversed, your brain is like, how do I type these words?
Yeah, what?
Jekyll is not a word. It's like, he almost got me because I was just like, oh, Michael Maxon.
Help me.